On the night my grandfather died, he looked at my father and said, "Marry your daughter. Don't let any man touch her. And if she refuses, you know what to do." For 3 days, I lived locked in my room, not knowing if my own father would protect me or destroy me. Hi there, my dear friends. What a joy to have you here with me today. Go ahead and get comfortable, grab a cup of coffee, a glass of water, because today's conversation is going to be one of those that touches your heart. I'm Jessica Silver. I'm 76 years old, well-lived years, and I live here in Cedar Falls, up in northern Montana. It's a tiny little town, one of those where everyone knows everyone, you know? It's right in the northern part of the state, surrounded by ranches, wilderness, hard-working people of faith. These days, my routine is pretty peaceful, thank God. I wake up early, when the rooster's still crowing outside, and the first thing I do is go to my kitchen to make some nice hot coffee. Oh, my children, coffee is sacred to me. Not just any coffee, you understand? I grind the beans myself, the old-fashioned way, with the cloth filter that my mother taught me to use when I was a girl. The smell that spreads through the house. It's like it brings everyone back close to me. You understand? After coffee, I like to sit on the porch and watch the sunrise. My little house is simple, but it has a wooden porch that I helped build with my children, and from there I can see the whole yard, the chickens pecking around, the flowers I plant every year, and in the back, the fence that separates my land from the woods. It's there, on that porch, where I do my crocheting. Oh, crocheting! That's my passion, you see. I started crocheting when I was about 15, but it was much later, when the gray hairs were already coming in, that it became my real refuge. You know how crocheting became such an important thing for me? It was after everything I went through, after peace finally came into my life. I needed something to keep my hands busy and calm my mind, because those of us who've been through trauma, my dears, we know that the mind doesn't stop. It keeps churning, going back, remembering. Then a neighbor here in Cedar Falls, Mrs. Eleanor, taught me some new stitches, and that was it. I fell in love all over again. Today I make table runners, placemats, doilies. I even sell some pieces at the town farmer's market. It's not for the money, it's more to feel that I'm useful, that my hands still create beautiful things, you understand? Here at home, I live with my husband, Ronald. He's a good man, hard-working, who I met many years after everything I'm going to tell you about. We have 3 children, all grown up now, and 6 grandchildren who are the light of my life. When they come here, the house becomes a party. I make cornbread, make peanut brittle, and they play in the yard, chasing the chickens, climbing the trees. It's a blessing to see life continue, you know? To see that, despite everything, we managed to build something beautiful. Oh, and before I continue, I want to make a special request to those of you watching me now. Tell me here in the comments, from what corner of America are you watching me? From what little town? And what time of day did you find this video from Grandma here? Early morning with breakfast? After lunch, during that rest time? Or in the evening, before bed? I read each comment with love, you see? And I'm so happy to know where you are and when you took time to listen to me. Tell me! Let's make a chain of love here in the comments. And another thing, my loves, if you can, click that like button down there. That helps the video reach more people who need to hear this story. And subscribe to the channel, okay? Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos. You can do it now, quickly, I'll wait. Well, but getting back, the story I'm going to tell today is heavy, my children. It's about choices, about the weight of the curses that elders place on us, and about a miracle, not one of those church miracles, but of a heart that chose love instead of hate. It's about my father, and about the 3 most terrifying days of my life, when I didn't know if he was going to protect me or destroy me. I was born right here in Cedar Falls in 1949. Back then, my dears, this was practically virgin wilderness. There was almost nothing here, just a few families of settlers who came to try their luck in the lands of northern Montana. My father, Alfonso Silver, was one of those brave men who believed something could be built here. He had come from Colorado, from a little town called Silver Creek, fleeing drought and lack of work. Along with him came my paternal grandfather, Gideon Silver. Oh, my children, that man made sure everyone used the full family name. He insisted on it, said it was to show that we had lineage, that we weren't just anybody. My father was a good man, soft-hearted, one of those who couldn't say no. He was hard-working, got up before dawn to tend the farm, planted corn, wheat, beans. But he lived in the shadow of Gideon. My grandfather was the type of man who controlled everything and everyone. He was tall, lean, with dark eyes that seemed to see through you. When he spoke, no one answered back. When he commanded, everyone obeyed. And my father, poor father, he never had the courage to stand up to his own father. My mother, Henrietta, was a sweet woman, petite, with black hair always pulled back in a bun. She had come from Arkansas, from a poor family in Little Rock, and had met my father at a county fair when he was passing through trading cattle. They married quickly, and she came here without knowing anyone. Poor thing, my mother suffered so much at my grandfather's hands. He didn't hit her, no, but he humiliated her. Said she was weak, that she didn't know how to do things right, that my father had married poorly. And she would lower her head and continue working, cooking, washing clothes in the creek, taking care of us. I had 2 brothers, William and Theodore. William was 4 years older than me, and Theodore was 3 years younger. We lived in a simple wooden house with a dirt floor covered with tin roofing. It had only 3 rooms, 1 bedroom where my parents and Theodore slept, another bedroom where William and I slept, and the kitchen, which was also the living room. The stove was wood-burning, and my mother spent all day there making food, heating water. There was no bathroom inside the house. We had to go to the back of the yard, where there was a little wooden outhouse with a hole in the ground. My childhood was simple, but there was joy, you know. We didn't have store-bought toys, so we made them up. I made dolls from corn husks, dressed them with fabric scraps my mother gave me. William and Theodore made cars from tin cans, and we'd play in the dirt, making roads, pretending we were traveling. When my grandfather wasn't around, we laughed, ran barefoot through the yard, climbed trees. I had a little friend, Clarissa, the neighbor's daughter, who lived about 2 miles from our house. We'd meet on the path to the fields and play Ring Around the Rosie, singing those old songs everyone knew. The routine was always the same. We'd wake up early, still dark, to the sound of the rooster and birds. My mother was already in the kitchen making coffee. We'd have black coffee with cornbread, and when we had it, a piece of corn cake. Then I had to help her wash dishes, sweep the house, fetch water from the well. My father and brothers would go to the fields with grandfather and stay there all day, weeding, planting, harvesting. I'd go sometimes too, especially during harvest time, to help pull corn or pick vegetables. It was hard work, you see. Our hands got calloused, our backs ached, but we didn't complain. Complaining near Gideon meant signing up for punishment. Oh, my grandfather's punishments. When we did something wrong, or when he simply thought we had, he'd get the belt and hit. He'd hit my father, hit my brothers. He never hit me, but the way he looked at me always left me with a strange, different kind of fear. It was like he had plans for me, you understand? He always told my father, "This girl is going to be the jewel of the family. Don't let just anyone get near her." And my father would agree, quietly, always quietly. I must have been about 10, 11 years old when I started noticing that my grandfather looked at me strangely. It wasn't a normal grandfather's look, you know. It was possessive. When I grew up and started becoming a young lady, he became even more controlling. He wouldn't let me talk to boys in town. Once I was playing with Clarissa and her brother, Isaac, and my grandfather suddenly appeared, grabbed my ear and dragged me home. Said I was offering myself, that I'd end up becoming a loose woman. My mother tried to defend me, said I was just a child, but he yelled at her and she went quiet. Life was like that, my dears. Hard work, little joy, and always that tension when Gideon was around. My father wasn't happy, I could see that. He looked at Mother with affection, but could never protect her from grandfather's cruelties. He looked at us, his children, and I saw sadness in his eyes. But he didn't react. He had been raised that way, obeying, accepting, swallowing anger and fear. I remember once, I must have been about 12, when my father tried to oppose Gideon. It was in an argument about selling a cow. My father wanted to sell it to buy medicine for my mother, who had a bad cough that wouldn't go away. Gideon said no, that the cow was worth more than her health, that she'd get better on her own. My father, for the first time, raised his voice. "But she's my wife, I decide." The silence that fell in that kitchen was scary. Gideon got up slowly, walked over to my father, and slapped him so hard it knocked him to the ground, and said, in that cold voice, "You don't decide anything. I own this land, this family, and you. Don't ever forget that." My father got up, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and lowered his head. He never opposed his father again. It was in that environment that I grew up, with fear, with forced respect, but also with love for my parents and brothers. We protected each other as best we could. My mother would hug me in secret and say, "One day this will pass, my daughter. One day we'll be free." I didn't quite understand what she meant, but I felt that she also dreamed of a different life. And that's how I spent my childhood, between playing in the yard with Clarissa and Isaac, the days of hard work in the fields, the smell of wet earth when it rained, and the constant fear of Gideon. But when I turned 13, things started to change in a way I never could have imagined. The way my grandfather looked at me became even more intense, and the things he said about me, about my future, started to become stranger and more frightening. I remember like it was yesterday, the day of my 13th birthday. My mother had made cornbread, my favorite, and we had gathered in the kitchen to sing Happy Birthday. It was June 1962. It was freezing cold that night, and we had lit the wood stove to warm the house. My brothers were excited. Clarissa had come with her family, and even my father seemed a little lighter, smiling as he handed me a little gift wrapped in brown paper. It was a wooden comb he had carved himself. But in the middle of the party, my grandfather Gideon entered the kitchen. He hadn't participated in the singing, had stayed in his room, as he always did when he had matters to think about, as he said. When he entered, the mood changed immediately. Everyone went quiet. He walked up to me, looked me up and down in that way that made me freeze, and said, in front of everyone, 13 years old, already becoming a woman. "Alfonso, you know what you need to do. This girl can't be running around loose, attracting any bum. From today on, she doesn't go out alone anymore. And you're going to start looking for a marriage for her. But it has to be someone trustworthy, someone from the family." My father swallowed hard and just nodded. My mother squeezed my hand under the table but said nothing. Clarissa and her family were embarrassed and soon left. The party ended there. I went up to my room, lay on my hard wooden bed, and cried quietly so no one would hear. I didn't quite understand what grandfather had meant by someone from the family, but it had sounded wrong, very wrong. In the months that followed, life became suffocating. My grandfather started watching me all the time. I could no longer go play with Clarissa without William coming along to watch me. I could no longer go get water from the well alone. I could no longer go to town on the rare occasions we went to sell flour or buy something. I lived locked in the house, helping my mother with chores, but feeling like the walls were getting tighter and tighter, as if the house had shrunk. And worst of all, my dears, was the way my grandfather talked about me. He started making strange comments in front of everyone, as if it were normal. Things like, "This girl is going to be my daughter-in-law. I've already decided." Or, "Jessica, you're going to marry someone I choose, and it'll be soon, because I won't let you get lost out there." My mother would turn pale when he said these things, but wouldn't open her mouth. My father would look away and change the subject. One day, I had just turned 14. I was by the creek washing clothes with my mother. It was a hot day, the sun was strong, and we were alone, with no one around. That's when my mother, for the first time, spoke about what was happening. She stopped scrubbing clothes, looked at me with tears in her eyes, and said, "My daughter, I need to tell you something. Your grandfather, he has plans for you, plans that aren't from God." I asked what she meant, and she took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "Your grandfather wants you to marry your father." The words came out of her mouth in a whisper, but it was as if she had shouted. I dropped the clothes in the water, stared at her without being able to blink. "What do you mean, Mother? He's married. He's my father." She held my hands, squeezed tight, and continued. "I know, my daughter. I know it's an abomination. But your grandfather, he's sick in the head. He thinks his bloodline is sacred, that you're a family jewel that can't go outside. He's already planted this idea in your father's head for a long time. And I'm afraid, Jessica. I'm very afraid of what he's capable of doing if your father doesn't obey." I couldn't answer. I stood there, paralyzed, feeling the world collapse around me. The sound of the creek, the singing of birds, everything became muffled, distant. My mother hugged me, and we stayed there, crying together, with the clothes forgotten in the water. At that moment, I understood that my life wasn't mine. That I was property, something that Gideon could decide the fate of. And that my father, poor father, was trapped in that web of obedience that had been woven his whole life. When we returned home, I looked at my father with different eyes. He was sitting on the porch, fixing a hoe, and when he saw me, he quickly looked away. That's when I realized he knew. He knew what grandfather wanted, and he was fighting alone with that inside his head. But how long could he resist? The months passed, and the situation became more and more tense. My grandfather started getting sick. He had a dry cough that wouldn't go away, lost weight, his skin turned yellow. The town doctor who came occasionally said it was liver trouble, that he wouldn't last long. And you know what's scariest, my dears? The sicker he got, the more obsessed he became with me. He would call me to his room and stare at me, as if memorizing every part of me. He'd say things like, "You'll stay in the family. You'll belong to a silver. I've already arranged everything." There was one day, I was 15, when he called me alone to his room. My heart raced, but I couldn't disobey. I entered slowly, and he was lying in bed, weak, but with that look still burning with determination. He grabbed my hand hard and said, "Jessica, I'm going to die soon, but before I die, I'm going to leave everything right. Your father will take care of you. And you'll be his. That's how it has to be. The family can't mix with strangers. You understand?" I trembled all over, wanted to pull my hand from his grip, but was paralyzed with fear. I could only nod, without saying anything. He let go of my hand and closed his eyes, satisfied, as if he had sealed a pact. I left that room feeling dirty, my children, feeling trapped in a web I didn't know how to escape. I ran to the yard, knelt behind the house, and vomited. I vomited from disgust, from fear, from despair. My mother found me there, helped me up, and took me inside. She didn't need to ask anything. She knew. That night, I heard my parents talking quietly in their room. My room was separated only by a thin wooden wall, so you could hear everything when they spoke a little louder. My mother was pleading, "Alfonso, you can't do this. She's your daughter. She's a child. This is sin. It's crime. It's monstrous." And my father, with that tired voice, full of pain, answered, "You think I don't know, Henrietta. You think I want this. But he's my father. He raised me to obey, and if I don't do what he wants, I don't know what he's capable of doing. He could throw us out of here. He could leave us in misery. He could..." "Could what, Alfonso? Could be worse than destroying your own daughter?" My mother was crying loudly now, and I was also crying on the other side of the wall, silently, biting the sheet so I wouldn't make noise. My father didn't answer, and his silence was the most terrifying thing of all. It was there, that night, that I understood. My father was in a war inside his own head, between the good man he was and the obedient son he had been forced to be his whole life. And I didn't know who was going to win. The winter of 1965 came colder than normal here in Cedar Falls. I had just turned 16, and my grandfather Gideon was dying. The disease had consumed him completely. He who was a big, strong man, who controlled everything and everyone, was now just skin and bones lying in that bed, breathing, wheezing, skin yellow as candle wax. But you know what's scary, my dears? Even dying, even without strength to get up from bed, he still commanded. Still controlled, still had that look of someone who wouldn't leave this world without leaving his mark of fire on all of us. It was an August night, bitterly cold outside, and we knew it was a matter of hours. The town doctor had come in the afternoon and told my father, "Prepare the family. He won't make it through the night." My mother had lit candles in the room, had put a crucifix on the wall, as if that could ward off the evil that hung over that house. My brothers were in the kitchen, quiet, scared, and I was in my room praying, asking God for it to end soon, for that man to leave and take all that curse with him. But then my father knocked on my door. "Jessica, come, he wants to talk to us." My heart almost jumped out of my mouth. I didn't want to enter that room, didn't want to hear anything more from that man. But I had no choice. I never did. I got up, dried my tears, and went. When I entered the room, the smell was suffocating. Smell of sickness, of approaching death. My grandfather was lying there, breathing heavily, eyes sunken, but still shining with that cruel determination. He looked at me, then looked at my father, who was on the other side of the bed. And then, with a hoarse, weak voice, but loaded with poison, he began to speak. "Alfonso, my son." He coughed, put his hand to his chest, but continued. "I'm leaving. But before I go, I need to leave things right. I leave you everything. This land, this house, everything I built. But you have an obligation, a sacred obligation." My father was pale, sweating cold, hands trembling. He knew what was coming. I knew what was coming. And we couldn't move, as if we were trapped in an invisible web. "This girl here," he pointed at me with his trembling finger, and I felt my whole body freeze. "This girl is the future of our lineage. She can't go outside. Can't marry just anyone. You will honor our family, Alfonso. You will marry her." The words fell in the room like stones. I felt my legs go weak, had to hold on to the wall not to fall. My father closed his eyes, took a deep breath, but said nothing. "And if she refuses," grandfather continued. And what came next was the most horrible thing I ever heard in my life. "If she refuses, you do what has to be done. You take her by force, as many times as necessary, until she accepts. Until she understands that her place is here, with you, continuing the blood of the Silvers. Do you hear me, Alfonso? Do you promise me?" My father opened his eyes, looked at his father, and I saw tears running down his face. Silent tears of a destroyed man. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Grandfather insisted stronger. "Do you promise me?" And then, my dears, in a low, broken voice, my father said, I promise." That tore me apart inside. I pretended I hadn't heard. Pretended that wasn't happening. I stood there, standing, looking at the wall, feeling the ground disappear under my feet. My grandfather gave a long sigh, satisfied, as if he had fulfilled his last mission on this earth. He closed his eyes, his breathing became weaker, and a few minutes later, he died. The silence that remained in that room was deafening. My father got up, left without looking at me, and I stayed there alone with the still warm body of the man who had just condemned me. You know what I felt at that moment? Nothing. I became completely empty, as if my soul had been ripped out from inside me. The funeral was the next day. We didn't have a cemetery nearby, so we buried him right there, in a corner of the property, under a big tree. Some neighbors came, people from town, but it was all quick. Nobody cried much. I think everyone knew that Gideon wasn't a man who deserved tears. After everyone left, the house was in deadly silence. My mother had red eyes from crying so much, but it wasn't for Gideon. No, it was for me. It was for what she knew was coming. My brothers were quiet, each in their own corner, not quite understanding what was happening. And my father, oh, my father. He disappeared. Physically, he was there, sitting on the porch or walking around the farm, but he wasn't present. He didn't talk, didn't look anyone in the eyes. It was as if he had died along with Gideon, and what remained was just an empty body, a shell. A day passed. I locked myself in my room, pushed the chair against the doorknob, and stayed there, praying, shaking, waiting for the moment when he would come for me, waiting for the moment when he would fulfill the promise he had made to his father. But he didn't come. The second day passed. I barely ate. My mother knocked on the door, left a plate of food, but I couldn't swallow anything. My stomach was churning with fear. At night, I heard his footsteps around the house. Slow, heavy steps, like someone carrying the world on their shoulders. He would stop in front of my room door. I would hold my breath. My heart beat so loud, I was sure he could hear it from the other side. But he didn't enter. He would stand there for a few minutes, and then leave. On the third day, I woke up with my body aching from tension, my mind exhausted from so much fear. I couldn't stand being locked up anymore. I needed water. I needed air. I went down to the kitchen early in the morning, before sunrise, thinking no one would be there. But he was. Sitting at the table, with a cup of cold coffee in front of him, staring at the wall. When he saw me, he raised his eyes. And for the first time in 3 days, we really looked at each other. His look was of a destroyed man. A man who had fought a war inside his own soul and still didn't know who had won. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just looked at me with those deep, tired eyes full of pain. And I looked at him, my father, the man who raised me, who taught me to plant, who carved a wooden comb for my birthday. And I wondered, was he still in there? Or had Gideon won, and what remained was just obedience and evil? I stood there, paralyzed, holding the hem of my dress, trembling. He slowly got up from the chair. My heart raced. He started walking toward me. Each step of his was a hammer hitting my chest. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. He stopped in front of me, stood there, looking down at me, and I closed my eyes, preparing for the worst. But what happened? My dears, what happened at that moment I will never forget. He stood there in front of me, so close I could hear his breathing. Heavy, tremulous, irregular. Each breath of his seemed like thunder in that silent kitchen. I still had my eyes closed, squeezed so tight it hurt. My whole body tense like a rope about to snap, every muscle contracted, every nerve on maximum alert, waiting for him to do what Gideon had ordered. Waiting for those hands of his, those hands calloused from so much farm work, to grab me violently. Waiting for him to drag me by the hair to the room. Waiting for him to transform me into what grandfather had decided I should be. Property, an object without will, a piece of flesh to perpetuate the cursed bloodline of the Silvers. My heart beat so hard, so desperately hard, it seemed like it would explode inside my chest, that it would tear through my ribs and jump out. I felt the metallic taste of blood in my mouth from biting my tongue so hard not to scream, not to beg, not to collapse right there. My nails were dug so deep into my palms that I felt the skin breaking, felt the warm moisture of blood flowing between my fingers. But the physical pain was nothing, my dears, absolutely nothing compared to the terror consuming my soul at that moment. I prayed quietly, desperately, without moving my lips, trying to cling to God as if he were the last life raft in the middle of a raging ocean. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. But the words got tangled in my head, mixed up, got lost. I couldn't think straight, couldn't form a complete thought. I could only feel the terror, that cold, visceral terror that slowly rises up your legs like freezing water, crosses your belly leaving a horrible emptiness, squeezes your chest until all the air is gone, rises up your throat until you almost suffocate, and paralyzes absolutely everything. His footsteps had stopped. He was there, right in front of me, just inches away. I could feel the heat of his body radiating toward me, could smell him, sweat, earth, and something else, something of despair that emanated from his pores, could hear his increasingly labored breathing, increasingly heavy as if he were drowning in air. And then came a sound I will never, ever forget until the last second of the last day of my life. It wasn't a scream of rage. It wasn't a sharp command. It wasn't the sound of someone about to commit a monstrosity. It was a moan. A low, muffled, strangled moan of pure pain, soul pain. Pain so deep it comes from a place we didn't even know existed inside us. My father began to sob. And it wasn't ordinary crying, my dears. It wasn't that crying of someone who's sad. It was the crying of a shattered man. It was the sound of a soul tearing in half, splintering into 1,000 pieces. It was the choked, desperate animal crying of someone who had held on too long, who had carried an impossible weight for too long, and finally couldn't take it for one more second, not one more thousandth of a second. I slowly opened my eyes, very afraid of what I would see, prepared for the worst. And what I saw, my children, my loves, what I saw was the most devastating, most brutal, most redemptive scene of my entire life. My father, that man who had been crushed, squeezed, annihilated by a tyrant for 40 years, that man I had spent 3 days and 3 nights fearing as one fears a demon, was falling. Not slowly, not with control. He collapsed, his knees bent all at once, as if all the strength, all the bones, all the structure that kept him standing had simply disappeared, evaporated. He fell to the wooden kitchen floor with a dull, heavy, violent thud, like a tree cut at the root that finally topples. He grabbed the hem of my dress with both hands, gripped so tightly I felt the fabric strain, almost tear. His hands shook violently. His fingers dug into the fabric like desperate claws. He pressed his forehead to my legs, there at the height of my knees, and began to cry in a way that shattered my heart into 1,000 pieces. His whole body trembled, shook as if he had a very high fever. His shoulders rose and fell violently with each sob. I could feel his tears wetting my dress, soaking the fabric, warm, abundant, desperate. And between the crying, between the deep moans of pain, between the sobs that tore the air from his lungs, he repeated, like a litany, like a plea, like a prayer, "Forgive me, my daughter, forgive me, my sweet child, forgive me, please, for the love of God, forgive me." I stood there, paralyzed, petrified, trembling from head to toe, unable to move even an inch. My legs were completely weak, without any strength. My heart that had been racing with pure terror was now tight, compressed with something else, pain, relief, confusion, love, fear, all mixed in a whirlwind of emotions I couldn't separate, couldn't name. My hands floated in the air, trembling, not knowing whether they should touch him or run away. Was it true? Was it real? Wasn't it a cruel trap? Wouldn't he suddenly pull me, knock me to the ground and... But no. He just cried. Cried and cried, clinging to my legs as if I were the only life raft in the middle of a stormy ocean, as if I were the last thing preventing him from completely sinking into darkness. "Forgive me for him," he managed to say between sobs, his voice completely broken, torn, unrecognizable. "Forgive me for the monster who raised me. Forgive me for the demon who created me and molded me in his image. Forgive me for every day, every damn day, every second of every day that I was too weak, too cowardly to face that man. Forgive me for letting him control our lives, destroy this family, poison absolutely everything good and pure we had in this house. He slowly raised his face, and when our eyes finally met, I saw a man completely, totally, irreversibly destroyed. His eyes were red, swollen. It looked like there was blood mixed with tears. His face was completely wet, soaked with tears and sweat that flowed non-stop. His mouth trembled, his chin trembled. He looked 10, 15 years older than he had seemed just 3 days ago. He looked like a man who had crossed hell, had visited the darkest places of human existence, and had returned forever marked, burned by the experience, transformed by pain. "I am a coward, Jessica," he said, and his voice came out in a hoarse, strangled whisper, loaded with shame so deep, so visceral it was almost palpable. A miserable, despicable coward who never, ever had the courage to protect you, to protect your mother, to protect this family that God gave me. I saw him humiliate your mother for 20 years, 20 whole years, and did nothing. Just lowered my head. Just swallowed it. Just accepted it. I saw him look at you that disgusting, sick way when you were still a little girl, and did nothing, said nothing, didn't protect you. He took a deep breath, a moan coming out with the air. And when he was dying, when he was in that bed stinking of death, when he gave me that order, that cursed, filthy, rotten, sick order straight from hell, I promised. Tears flowed faster now. I promised him, Jessica. I looked into that demon's eyes and promised I would. That I would do that to you. To my own daughter. To my little girl. He started hitting his closed fist against his own chest, hard, repeatedly, as if he wanted to punish himself, as if he wanted to tear the rotten heart out of his body. I promised! I promised! The scream came torn from his throat. And in these 3 days of hell on earth, I fought a war inside my head. A bloody war between the obedient son that man forced me to be for 40 years and the father I desperately want to be. That I need to be. That I have the obligation to be. He held my face with both hands, with delicacy, with reverence, with such care as if I were made of porcelain, as if I were the most precious, most fragile, most sacred thing in the entire universe. His hands trembled so much I felt the vibration on my face. Every night, my daughter, every night of these 3 days I went to your door. Every night I stood there on the other side, leaning against the wood, with my hand on the doorknob, listening to you crying softly, trying to muffle the crying in the pillow so no one would hear. New tears sprouted in his eyes. And every night I felt his voice in my head, hammering, hammering, non-stop, commanding, ordering, demanding that I fulfill the promise. You promised, Alfonso. You gave your word. Honor your word. Honor your father. Honor the lineage. Enter that room and do what has to be done. She's yours now. She belongs to you. She's family property. Use her. Break her. Make her obey. His voice was so real, so strong, as if he were still alive, as if he were whispering in my ear. He squeezed my face tighter, not to hurt, but as if he needed to feel that I was real. And I stood there, with my hand on the doorknob, gripping, almost turning, trembling all over, fighting against myself, hating myself with every fiber of my being. Thinking, if I enter that room, if I open this door, if I do what he ordered, I lose my daughter forever. I lose my soul forever. I become exactly what I most hate, most despise, most fear in the entire world. I become him. I become Gideon. His voice was getting firmer now, more determined, as if speaking it out loud was giving him strength. But his voice was so strong, Jessica, so powerful. 40 years of obedience. 40 years being conditioned, being molded, being broken and remolded in his image. 40 years getting beaten when I disobeyed. 40 years hearing that I was nothing, that I was worth nothing, that my only function was to obey, obey, obey. These things don't disappear in 3 days. Don't disappear easily. He closed his eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, as if gathering all the courage that still existed within him. When he opened his eyes again, there was something different there. A determination. A clarity. But then, this morning, when I came down and saw you entering the kitchen, when I saw the absolute terror on your face, the way you trembled like a leaf in a storm, the way you looked at me, not like a daughter looks at her father, but like prey looks at a predator, like a little lamb looks at a wolf. You looked at me as if I were him, as if I were Gideon. His voice broke again, more tears flowing. And at that moment, at that exact moment, something inside me died. And it wasn't the good man who still existed inside me. It was the obedient son. It was the slave. It was the chain that tied me to that monster even after he had died. I felt it breaking inside my chest, felt the prison opening, and I decided, enough, it's over, no more, never again. He pulled my face closer, touched his forehead to mine, and looked deep, deeply into my eyes. I will never, never, never touch you that way, he said, and each word came loaded with absolute conviction. I'd rather die 1,000 times. I'd rather be tortured. I'd rather lose this land he left, lose this house, lose every piece of cursed inheritance that man accumulated. I'd rather live under a bridge, begging for food, being cold and hungry, than lay a finger on you with bad intentions. He sobbed again, but now it was different. It wasn't just pain. It was also liberation. You are my daughter, my little girl, my child, the most sacred, most pure, most precious, most important thing that exists in my life. You came from me, but you don't belong to me. You don't belong to anyone. You are a human being, a person, with your own will, with your own dreams, with the right to choose your own path. His words began to come out faster now, as if he had kept this for so long that now he needed to get it all out at once. You know what I thought? On the second night, when I was standing at your door? I remembered when you were born. Remember I told you I was so happy when I found out it was a girl? Remember? Your grandfather got angry, said girls were useless, that girls were weakness. But I was happy, because I looked at you, so tiny, so fragile, wrapped in that little cloth, and I thought, this child is going to have a different life from mine. I'm going to protect her. I'm going to make her grow up free, happy, without fear. That was my first thought when I held you in my arms for the first time. He smiled through the tears, a sad but genuine smile. You were so tiny, Jessica. You fit completely in the palms of my hands. And you looked at me with those little eyes, and I swore to myself, swore to God, that I would do everything to see you grow up happy. And I failed. I failed miserably. I let that man imprison you. I let that man look at you with those disgusting eyes. I let that man plant this rotten seed of future he had imagined for you. He squeezed my face more tenderly. But I won't fail anymore. It's over. From today, from this moment, you are free. Free to marry whoever you want, whenever you want, if you want. Free to never marry if you don't want to. Free to go wherever you dream of going. Free to study, to work, to do what your heart tells you. I will work the rest of my life to give you that freedom, to give you the opportunities I never had. He kissed my forehead with infinite delicacy. I'm going to spend the rest of my days trying to make up for the fear I caused you in these last years, trying to erase from your memory those 3 horrible days, trying to show you that I am your father, your real father, not the monster Gideon wanted me to be. And if you can never completely forgive me, I'll understand. I'll respect it. Because you have every right not to forgive me. Every right. At that moment, my dears, at that exact moment, something inside me finally broke. All the terror of the last 3 days, all the accumulated fear of the last years, all the anguish, all the pain, everything came out of me in desperate, violent, liberating crying. I threw myself into his arms, held on to him with all the strength I had, and cried. I cried like I had never cried in my life. Cried until I had no more tears. Cried until my throat hurt. Cried until my whole body hurt. And he hugged me. Hugged me tight, so tight I could barely breathe, but I didn't care. He pressed me against his chest, one hand on my head, the other on my back, and cried with me. We completely collapsed there on the cold floor of that kitchen, embraced, crying, trembling, letting absolutely everything out. All the pain, all the trauma, all the horror of the last years. It was as if we had kept an ocean of tears inside us, and finally, the dam had burst. My little girl, he whispered between sobs, stroking my hair. My beloved daughter, my precious child. I love you so much. And I'm so sorry for everything. I forgive you, Daddy. I managed to say through tears, my voice coming out strangled. I forgive you. I forgive you. We stayed there. I don't know how long. Could have been 5 minutes. Could have been an hour. Could have been an eternity. Time had stopped existing. There was only us there, father and daughter, healing together, saving each other together, being reborn together from the ashes of that nightmare. That's when I heard hurried, desperate footsteps coming from the hallway. My mother had woken up. She had heard the screams, had heard the crying echoing through the entire house. She appeared at the kitchen door, barefoot, in her nightgown, with her long hair loose and messy, eyes wide with fear and hope and terror and relief, all at the same time. When she saw us there, embraced on the floor crying, she stopped, covered her mouth with both hands, and understood. She understood everything instantly. Alfonso. Her voice came out in a tremulous whisper, loaded with emotion. Alfonso. You. My father looked at her over my head, eyes still full of tears, but there was something new there. There was liberation. There was peace. There was determination. I chose them, Henrietta, he said, his voice hoarse but firm. I chose my daughter. I chose my wife. I chose my real family. I chose love. I chose life. And damn Gideon. Damn everything he represented. Damn the cursed land, the cursed inheritance, the cursed lineage. We're going to live free. We're going to live in peace. We're going to live with dignity. Finally free. My mother covered her face with her hands and started crying. It wasn't crying of sadness. It was crying of relief so deep, so immense, that it came out in violent sobs. She had carried this fear, this anguish, for so long. She had suffered so much at that man's hands. And now, finally, it was over. She ran to us, knelt on the floor, and joined the hug. And there, the three of us, the family that had survived hell, we stayed embraced on the floor of that kitchen, crying tears of pain, but also of liberation, of relief, of hope, of new beginnings, of new life. The monster had died. The chain had been broken, and the family had survived, hurt, marked, but alive, and finally free. The days that followed that liberating morning were days of rebirth, my dears. It was as if the entire house had awakened from a nightmare that lasted decades. The air became lighter, the walls seemed brighter, even the birds outside sang differently. Or maybe it was just us who could finally hear their song without that horrible weight in our chests. The first thing my father did, on the same day as that liberating morning, was drag the bed where Gideon had died out of the house. He called my brothers, William and Theodore, and the three of them together carried that old bed, that cursed bed where so many cruel orders had been given, and took it to the middle of the property. My father got kerosene, poured it on all that wood, struck a match, and set it on fire. My mother and I stayed on the porch, watching. The flames rose high, orange, red, crackling, devouring every piece of that bed. And you know what I felt, my children? Relief. Such great relief that I started crying again, but this time it wasn't crying of pain. It was crying of liberation. My mother held my hand, squeezed tight, and we stayed there watching the fire consume the last physical symbol of Gideon's tyranny. "It's over," my father said, looking at the flames. "It's really over." In the days that followed, he burned more things. He burned the old papers that grandfather kept in a wooden box, papers scribbled with those crazy ideas about pure lineage, about family blood, about how the Silvers were superior to others. My father read some of those papers out loud before throwing them in the fire, and it was scary, my dears. It was the mind of a completely sick man, obsessed, who had turned the family into a prison. "This isn't inheritance," my father said, throwing the papers into the flames. "This is poison. And poison we don't pass on. We destroy it." After that, we did a complete cleaning of the house. We washed every corner, every wall, scrubbed the floor until our knees hurt. My mother opened all the windows and let the wind in. Take away that smell of sickness, of death, of evil that seemed to have permeated the wood. We sang while we cleaned. We sang hymns, sang old songs my mother knew. And for the first time in years, the house had sounds of joy. My father changed completely. He who had always been so quiet, so bent under the weight of obedience, began to talk more, to smile, to joke. He began to treat my mother as she deserved, with respect, with affection, with love. He asked her opinion about everything, about what to plant, about what to sell, about plans for the family. They talked as equals, and my mother flourished. She who had been so erased, so small in Gideon's presence, began to shine. And with me. Oh, my children, with me he was wonderful. He went back to being the father I remembered from my very early childhood, before grandfather's control became unbearable. He taught me things. He took me along when he went to work. He introduced me to neighbors with pride. "This here is my daughter Jessica, a smart, hard-working girl who will go far in life." And he made a point of saying this in front of everyone, as if he wanted to announce to the world that I wasn't property, that I was a person of my own value. About 2 weeks after that morning, he did something that marked me deeply. He built a new wooden chair, very beautiful, with a high back and padded seat that my mother had sewn. He called everyone, me, my mother, my brothers, and placed the chair on the porch in the best spot where the morning sun hit and afternoon shade fell. "This chair is Jessica's," he announced. "It's her place, and no one sits here without her permission, because in this house her will matters. Her space is respected, and she will never again have to ask permission to exist." I broke down crying, my dears. I broke down, because that was more than a chair. It was a symbol. It was my father telling the world, and especially me, that I had value, that I had rights, that I had a place that was mine and that no one could invade. I sat in that chair, still crying, and my father knelt in front of me, held my hands, and said, "You are free, Jessica. Free to marry whoever you choose, whenever you want, if you want. Free to say no, free to say yes, free to dream. I will work every day of my life to ensure you have real choices, not choices someone imposes. Do you hear me? You own your life, not me, not your mother, not anyone, you." Those words, my children, those words healed me in a way I can't explain. It was as if he had removed the chains Gideon had put on me and had given me wings instead. The months passed, and life returned to normal, but a new normal, beautiful, healthy. I went back to leaving the house without fear, went back to visiting Clarissa, went back to going to town. And for the first time in my life, I began to dream about the future, not with terror, but with hope. It was on one of those days in town, I was 17 already, that I met Ronald. He was a young man from a settler family that had established itself not far from us, towards the Helena area, a neighboring region. He had come to Cedar Falls to sell grain and ended up stopping at the same store where I was with my father. Ronald was different from other young men. He was polite, respectful, hardworking. He had kind eyes and a calm smile. We started talking, just town talk, about farming, about the weather, about nothing much. But there was something about him that caught my attention, a genuine kindness. When we were leaving, my father noticed I had looked at Ronald. And you know what he did? He smiled. Smiled at me in that complicit way and said quietly, "Seems like a good young man. If you want to get to know him better, I have nothing against it. But only if you want. The choice is yours." The choice is yours. Those 3 words were so new, so strange, so wonderful that I almost couldn't believe they were real. For the first time in my life, someone was giving me permission to choose. No, more than permission, was reminding me that the power to choose had always been mine. It had just been stolen for a long time. Ronald started appearing more in town, and we started talking more. He told me about his life, about his dreams of having bigger land, of building a good and healthy family. And I found myself telling him about my dreams too. Simple dreams, of having a house full of peace, of raising children in freedom, of living without fear. It took a year for him to ask my father for my hand in marriage. And when he asked, my father called me alone to the room and said, "Ronald asked me for your hand, but I won't decide anything. Do you want to marry him?" I thought, really thought. I looked deep into my heart, and the answer was there, clear as river water. Yes, I wanted to. Not because someone was forcing me, not because it was what was expected of me, but because I had chosen, because I loved that gentle man who treated me with respect, because I wanted to build a life with him. "I want to, Daddy," I said. "I choose him." My father hugged me tight and whispered in my ear, "Then you have my blessing. And more importantly, you have my joy, because you chose for yourself, and that's all I ever wanted for you." I married Ronald in 1967 in a simple ceremony at the little church in Cedar Falls. My father walked me to the altar, and when he placed my hand in Ronald's hand, he had tears in his eyes. Tears of happiness, because he knew, and I knew, that this wasn't an arranged marriage, it wasn't an imposition, it wasn't a prison, it was a free choice. It was true love, it was freedom. And that's how, my dears, the turnaround happened in my life. It wasn't a divine miracle that fell from heaven. It was the courageous choice of a man who decided to break chains. It was the love of a father who chose his daughter instead of obedience. It was the liberation that comes when we finally decide enough is enough, that we won't live trapped in the past anymore, that we'll build a new future, even if it's difficult. Life with Ronald was good from the beginning. We built our own little house, not far from my parents' house. And for the first time, I lived without fear. I lived with love. I lived free. And here I am today, my dears, at 76 years old, living here in Cedar Falls, the same little town where I was born, where I suffered, where I was liberated, and where I built my life. This land that was once the stage of so much suffering transformed into my real home, the place where I put down roots of love and peace. My Ronald is here with me to this day, thank God. It's been 58 years of marriage, 58 years of companionship, respect, true love. He's a good man, my children, always has been. Never raised his voice to me, never made me feel less, never tried to control me. He gave me what I most needed after everything I went through: security, freedom, and love. We had 3 children, Marcus, Lucy, and little Paul. I raised them completely differently from the way I was raised. I raised them with love, with freedom, with respect. Never raised my hand to any of them. Never yelled the way Gideon yelled. Never imposed anything. I let them choose their paths, their loves, their lives. And today they're wonderful adults, each with their own family, each happy in their own way. And the grandchildren. Oh, my dears, the 6 grandchildren are the joy of my life. When they come here to the house, and they come often, every week there's someone here, the house becomes a party. They run through the yard, play with the chickens, climb trees, fill the kitchen with mess. And I sit here on my porch doing my crocheting, looking at them, and thank God for every second of this life I have today. Crocheting became my therapy, my refuge, my peace. I wake up early every day, make my coffee filtered through that cloth filter that's a family tradition, and go to my porch with the yarn and needle. I make table runners, make placemats, even make little clothes for the grandchildren. I sell some pieces at the town farmer's market, but it's not for the money, no. It's because it feels good to create beautiful things with these hands that once trembled so much with fear. My father lived to be 73. He died in peace in 1995, surrounded by family, knowing he had fixed what needed to be fixed. Before leaving, he called me alone, held my hand and said, "I die happy because you are free, because you are happy, because I managed to break that cursed chain." And I said to him, "You saved me, Daddy. You gave me life twice, once when I was born, and another when you chose to protect me." He died with a smile on his face. My mother lived longer, to 81. She saw all the grandchildren grow up, saw the family happy, saw that the nightmare had truly ended. When she passed in 2003, I held her hand and thanked her for protecting me as she could, for being my safe harbor during the difficult years. Today, when I look back, it still hurts, my children. I won't lie. The scars are here. The nightmares still come sometimes, but the pain doesn't control me anymore. The past doesn't define me anymore. I am more than that terrified girl locked in her room. I am the woman who survived, who rebuilt, who created a beautiful family on top of the ruins of trauma. And you know what I discovered in all these years? That the real miracle doesn't happen from heaven, like magic. The real miracle happens when a human being, even broken, even destroyed, chooses love instead of hate. Chooses to protect instead of destroy. Chooses to break the cycle instead of perpetuating evil. My father could have destroyed me that morning, could have fulfilled Gideon's order, could have transformed into the monster. But he chose differently. And that choice saved not only me, but our entire lineage. My children grew up free because my father chose to liberate me. My grandchildren play happily because the chain was broken. Sometimes I sit here on the porch, watching the sun rise over Cedar Falls, and think about everything I went through. And I give thanks. I give thanks for having survived. I give thanks for my father's courage. I give thanks for Ronald's love. I give thanks for the beautiful family I built. I give thanks for every day of peace I have today. Life is good now, my dears. Simple, but good. And after everything I went through, simplicity with peace is worth more than any wealth in the world. My dears, my loves, if there's someone out there watching who is going through something similar, who is trapped in a cycle of abuse, control, evil within their own family, I want to say something to you. You are not alone. And you don't deserve this. No one in this world deserves to live in fear inside their own home. I learned that evil perpetuates when we stay silent, when we accept, when we think there's no way out, that it's always been this way, that it has to be this way. But it doesn't, my child. It doesn't. The chain can be broken. The cycle can be interrupted. Freedom can be conquered. If you are suffering at the hands of someone in your family, seek help. Talk to someone you trust. Look for the authorities in your country, the organizations that exist to protect people. In every place in the world, there are good people wanting to help. Don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid to report. Shame and fear are the tools that abusers use to keep us trapped. And if you are a father, if you are a mother, if you have children under your responsibility, I beg you, Protect them with your life. No matter what your parents did to you, no matter how you were raised, you can choose differently. You can break the cycle. You can be the miracle in your children's lives, just as my father was the miracle in mine. There is no lineage, no tradition, no obedience that justifies destroying a child. There isn't. Your children are not your property. They are human beings with their own will, with their own dreams, with the right to freedom and dignity. I went through hell, my dears, but I came out the other side. I came out hurt. I came out marked, but I came out alive. And I built a beautiful life, a life worth living, a free life. And if I could do it, you can too. Don't give up. Don't accept that evil wins. Fight, report, seek help. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be free. And for you who made it this far, who listened to this grandmother's story, I want to make a special request. Subscribe to this channel. Hit the notification bell, because stories like mine need to be told, need to be heard, need to serve as warning, hope, strength for those who are suffering now. And leave me a comment down there with the word freedom, just that word. So I know you watched to the end, that you heard my story, and that you understood the message. Freedom. That's the most beautiful word in the world, my children, and everyone deserves it. Do it now. Don't wait another minute. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment freedom. Because together, as a global community, we can make a difference in the lives of those who suffer. May God bless you. May God protect you. And may freedom, true freedom, come into the life of every person who needs it. A kiss to the heart of each one. Until the next story.